Good morning. My name is Christopher Sanderson. You can call me Chris if you raise your hand or have a question at any time during the presentation. Feel free to make this pretty conversational and interactive and informative. I want you guys to participate and ask questions that you have along the way as you see fit. I'm going to start just by telling you a little bit about myself and what Sanderson Childers is, and then we can do something a little bit more fun and interactive as we go. So, first, just to talk about who we are. So my original company that I started about almost 10 years ago now is called Sanderson Test Prep. I'm originally from Miami, Florida. Actually just moved up here a few months ago. I've been coming up on weekends. My fiance is a dentist on post at Bragg. And so she started here a little over a year ago. So for about the last 14 months, I've been coming up to Fayetteville very regularly. But I just moved up full-time this spring. And Sanderson Test Prep was my company in South Florida, which is a test prep and tutoring company. And that, my original, trade was teaching, and education is something that I value highly and that I definitely, prioritize in my own life and, for our students and for everyone. I think, education is probably the most important aspect of our lives in terms of developing ourselves both as people and professionally. But when I was working with Chaz, so a good friend of mine now and my partner in Sanderson Childers, Chaz was a teacher of mine at Sanderson Test Prep, and we both were really into coding. So we a lot of times would enter coding competitions together. We would kick around ideas about technology, and we were very passionate about particularly automation is one thing that we actually did a lot of projects together in terms of trying to find ways that you can automate your business by using coding. So we've done projects for ourselves and our own businesses, and then we've also done projects which are software development projects for other companies. And that was sort of our initial link, and that's when we decided, let's make this official. Let's actually put this on paper and form Sanderson Childers and make it into a company and really tackle this full force. So that's who we are, and that's how we came to know each other and get started with developing Sanderson Childers. And so I'll talk to you about a few different aspects of our business. So we are a technology company, but I always put this slide first for business consulting because I think that we are not an IT company. And a lot of people, when they hear technology, they think, hey, can you fix my computer? And I just want to be clear and upfront that what we don't do is, if your computer's running a little slow, we say call an IT company. What we do is provide technology solutions for primarily small businesses. So our cap that we will work with are companies that are up to $5 million a year in gross revenue. So anything over that, usually people have their own in-house tech services that can provide some of those technology needs. Oftentimes for larger companies, what we have done is we have done individual projects. If somebody wants us to write a specific program to tackle one of their in-office tasks, but primarily larger companies have in-house staff that provide those services for them. So we really do cater to smaller businesses. And the business consulting aspect of things, so the first thing that we do offer a free hour-and-a-half consultation where we come in and we assess someone's business and take a look at where you are in your business, what day-to-day operations do you need help with, how could technology play a role in facilitating some of what you do on the daily in your business. So we come in and we provide that hour-and-a-half assessment for free just to learn about someone's business and see if we can maybe come up with ideas of ways that we could incorporate technology to benefit them. Then we try to work with our customers and try to establish targets. And when we establish targets, what we're looking for are primarily two things. One, and the first most obvious thing that our customers tend to go to is financial goals. They look at what that dollar amount should look like. So if they want to increase their gross revenue, if they want to increase their profits, if they want to increase their own take-home pay, how do they accomplish certain financial goals within their business? And then the second thing that we look at is we look at lifestyle as it relates to business. And that's something that we think is important to separate and target individually. So we'll talk with a business owner and we'll say, okay, we'd like to make X money by the end of the year and we can work on that together, but let's also look at lifestyle. Would you like to work 4 days a week instead of 5? Or would you like to, should we set up a target to try to get you out of here after 35 total hours of your work week? You know, how can we reduce your total number of hours? How can we potentially increase the quality of your life by making certain aspects of your business run themselves so that you don't have to? So setting up those targets and really seeing if we can figure out what the end goal is for our business owners that we work with is something important to us. And it's something that I think a lot of business owners, truthfully speaking, probably don't do enough of. I think that, you know, a lot of times when you sort of are an entrepreneur and you're starting a business and you're growing it and you get very excited, you know, about the business aspect of things, and sometimes you forget how much work you're really putting in. So that's something that we like to sit down, you know, with our business owners and say, you know, how much do you want to work? How much do you not want to work? And it's not always that everyone's dream is to, you know, lay on the couch all day and watch TV and just have money rolling in. That sounds lovely, but a lot of times people really enjoy what they do for work, but there are certain aspects of the job that they don't like. And that's what we try to focus on and say, how can we help you do less of those aspects of the job that maybe aren't your favorite? We help set up a business development plan from there in order to accomplish those targets. And then along the way, for our ongoing customers, so we do offer a monthly program where we'll go in, we set up monthly goals, we set up plan of action, we follow up each week with a call, and then we go in person and once a month sit down together and say, here are our goals from last month, let's see how we did, and let's set up a plan of action and specific goals that we can achieve for this month. And whenever we sit down with a client, something that I am very, I think, strongly passionate about is I don't love the idea of meetings to talk about things theoretically where things don't get done. So every time we come in and sit down with a client and we come up with our plan of action for that month, we always accomplish at least item number 1 on that plan of action, whatever that is. If someone says, you know what, my business doesn't really have a social media presence, I don't really use Facebook much, I'd like to look into setting up a Facebook page, we'll at least make sure we set up that Facebook page right then and there in that meeting and then come up with a plan for how to manage it and how to post content and so forth, you know, moving forward. But we always try to accomplish at least item number 1 on that plan of action each month. And as I mentioned, the follow-up, we do follow up throughout the month with a weekly call for our ongoing business consulting clients. Now on the technology side of things, we program, Chaz and I program in a few different languages. We don't touch app development ourselves. We do have other programmers who work with Xcode and Swift, which is, you know, like app development platforms. So we do have other programmers who can tackle some of those needs. If somebody is looking, you know, maybe you have a creative idea for an app that you think would be neat, or maybe it's just something that could be a branch of your business and you want to develop an app because you think it's something that could be useful for your customers, or, you know, maybe even for your employees to use, to log hours, to you know, share information. So the app development is through other programmers, but pretty much any other programming language for software development things, those are things that Chaz and I cover ourselves. My favorite thing with business, and you'll see how excited I get in a minute when I talk about automation through Google Apps script, but that's my primary platform that I work through for our clients. So we can do individual programming projects, and one thing that I want to highlight about that is that over here it says proprietary, and that's something important to keep in mind. So when you're hiring us, the work that we're doing and the actual programs that we're developing for you are yours. And we do make sure, you know, to highlight that distinction, because if you're coming up with a novel idea, we're very comfortable with, you know, the legal process of we're happy to sign an NDA and, you know, make sure that we can work on your idea and your program and allow you to have full confidence to know that just because we're developing the code for it doesn't mean that it's something that, you know, we are going to copy and paste and, you know, come up with, you know, version 2.0 ourselves. So it is entirely any of your intellectual property, you know, certainly remains your intellectual property for any of the programs that we do. Now when it comes to automation, so here's where I'll ask us to get a little bit interactive and come up with some creative ideas for how we could automate things in our own day-to-day lives and our own businesses. But I'll just give you a quick example of a payroll and billing program that was actually the first program that Chaz and I wrote together, and it was for Sanderson Test Prep. So Sanderson Test Prep is my educational services company that's in Miami, Florida, And every time a teacher tutors a student, so back in the day, they would fill out a paper tutoring log, and then somebody, when it came time to like bill hours, would have to go into QuickBooks and manually say, okay, let's see, the teacher here is Jesse. He met with Joey Smith for 1 hour of SAT tutoring. All right, Jesse, enter time, 1 hour, Joey Smith tutoring, for every single entry. So someone in office would do that. And that was prohibitively expensive to have the administrative staff to just keep track of all of our billing and payroll to make sure that Jesse got paid for his hour of teaching, Joey Smith paid for his hour of tutoring that he received, and that we kept all of our books in line. So we wrote a program which allowed us to have iPads for each teacher. There's a form on the iPad. The teacher selects from a drop-down menu, Joey Smith, Jesse's performing the tutoring, 1 hour SAT, submit. And that program that we developed takes that information populates a spreadsheet, the program pulls from that spreadsheet, enters all the information into QuickBooks, invoices the student, bills their credit card on file, and pays the teacher all seamlessly without us having to touch anything. So essentially it works similar to like an Uber-esque style of platform where as a teacher tutors, they can get paid right away. They don't have to wait 2 weeks for payroll to be processed. They submit those logs. When those logs get submitted, they're getting paid on that day. The students are getting charged at that time, and we don't need additional administrative staff to address that. So that was the first program that we did together, and in total, it saved about 22 office admin hours a week. So if you think of utilizing a program like that, 22 hours of someone who's making roughly 20 bucks an hour, so that adds up to $440 a week. So over the course of a year, you're looking at a little over $20,000 of admin costs saved, potentially, for a business. Or maybe you're taking those same admin hours, and now instead of somebody entering data, which maybe isn't the best utilization of someone in your office's skills or talents, maybe they can go out and work on business development. Maybe they can go out and sign up a new client for you. So that's the idea of automation, is trying to find systems that can take your day-to-day routine and allow you to optimize the way that you use either yourself or your personnel to grow your business. So with that example in mind, let's get interactive and let's think of creative ideas of how we can automate things. So first thing I'm going to ask for are some volunteers to share what you don't like. What's your least favorite activity from your weekly to-do list? We love everything about our jobs? Okay, well then, that's really good to hear. Does anyone have anything that they could volunteer for us that they don't love doing, but you gotta do it, but I hate replying to emails, or I hate having to submit my hours, or I hate incoming calls from these types of customers. Let's get a volunteer. I know it's the morning, but we've got coffee.
Yes. Logging hours for employees.
Okay.
So we have an online portal that I have to take all the punches and then put them in there manually. I don't know if that would help.
So yeah, that's a perfect example of something that I'm sure if we got into that portal, there can be a program written. Where do you pull those hours from? Just out of curiosity.
We use FingerCheck.
Okay.
Currently.
Okay, so that means you already have some electronic version of that information, and I will tell you this right now, just to kind of allow us to start thinking of ways that automation could potentially relate to our business. If information exists electronically, there is a way to move it from point A to point B. Obviously, that's going to vary from one program or one platform to another, but if it exists electronically, there's a way to take it from point A and move it to point B automatically. So if that means data entry and you're putting information from one platform and manually entering it into another, that is a good example of something that could be optimized with a program that provides that kind of automation. Other ideas. How could automation potentially help your business, or maybe reduce your day-to-day kind of tasks, especially those tasks that we don't love doing? Yes?
Monthly reports.
Okay, what kind of reports?
Google My Business stats every month.
Okay, so Google actually has really, really good developer platforms that allow you to integrate a variety of Google services. So if you have Google My Business, Google Analytics, you can use a Google Apps script to do a lot of really neat things through Google to put things into spreadsheets, to organize the spreadsheets any way that you would like, even to send out that information to anyone who needs to receive it. Like, can all be automated through Google's developer platform. That they actually, it makes sense, because they have so many products that cross a variety of platforms, but they have a really, really seamless integration of the different kind of Google services, and it's a really kind of smooth platform to work on. So if you do use Google for anything, how many of us use Gmail? So, perfect. So Gmail is something that is, pretty ubiquitous. People use it everywhere, and there are so many, even really short scripts that you can use in your own email, just for personal use, to make your day-to-day email interactions a lot easier. You don't always have to set up an out-of-office reply, but you can create programs that will offer an automatic reply to a variety of different incoming emails. You can search for keywords and say any email that says this, I want prioritized, and you can stack your incoming Gmail list. There are a lot of really short and very simple, actually, programs that you can use for yourself, even on an individual basis, just to help get rid of some of the clutter that we have in our lives in the day-to-day. Other ideas? Go for one or two more. Things that we either don't love about our work week, or creative ideas of you say, hey, would it be possible to maybe automate this type of task? Yes?
Time tracking and payroll.
So yes, time tracking and payroll. And you'll notice that a lot of the things that we don't love doing tend to be data-driven, which is why a lot of times automation programs can be so beneficial. Because time tracking, there are a lot of good programs out there for that, but it still requires approval and it still requires review. And there are a lot of ways that you can even automate that review. So for example, with our time tracking and payroll program that we wrote, we have a bunch of flags in there. So I don't have to look over every week's payroll, because I can see if, for example, if a teacher logs an average number of hours, it keeps track of that each week. And if that increases or decreases by a significant enough number, then the program itself will either send me an email and say, hey, this teacher entered 50 hours this week instead of the normal 5. And I'll look and say, oh, what's going on? Maybe they accidentally misclicked something when they were submitting a log themselves, and it's an easy fix. And if a teacher normally does 5 hours a week and then they do 1, it'll email me and it'll email the teacher and it'll say, hey, we noticed your hours dropped off a little bit this week. What's going on? And it might be a simple thing. And it gives them action buttons in that email. They can click, everything's cool, I was out of town. Or they can click, actually, my second job has been keeping me busy, so I don't, think I can, maintain those 5 hours anymore. But they can let us know information so that we can respond to that. And that can be automated. So when it comes to time tracking and payroll, there are a lot of creative ways that you can not only do the time tracking and payroll, but then also use that information in a meaningful way for your business. I want to talk about when it comes to automation. So does anyone use an app for work? Anyone use an app in their line of work, either as an employee or as a business owner?
Shopify.
Okay. So what do you personally do on Shopify?
Load all my inventory, manage my website, my sales.
And what kind of sales, or what kind of products are you?
Dog treats.
Okay, awesome. So so apps are a very important tool for businesses, and a lot of business owners sometimes, I think that technology, like having an app, is something that can be so overwhelmingly expensive that it can really, intimidate small business owners. And that's something that I personally enjoy a lot, is showing someone a technology solution that they can take advantage of and showing them a price tag that is surprisingly low. And they're like, really? That's all it would cost for that? And a lot of times I think technology gets a bad rap, so to speak, because I think that people think technology and they think expensive. And those two things are often associated, and it's not necessarily the case. So when it comes to apps, even small businesses can use apps in meaningful ways, and primarily for anything to do with employees. I can tell you right now, an app is such a good utilization of your resources because it's the one thing that everybody has their phone with them all the time. That's just the reality of the society that we live in. And so that means that your employees are going to have access to that tool. And whether it's logging their own hours instead of having to submit something that someone in office logs, or whether it's being able to charge customers on site. If you have an employee, anyone who's going to work with a customer outside of your office space. So if you have a landscaping company, if you have a plumbing company, if you have an electrical company, anyone who's going out and doing work, apps are great ways for employees to be able to interact with the business. And it's something that you can guarantee employees will always have with them. So it's actually a really smart tool to take advantage of. If you are interested in sitting down and talking about app development, that's something that I am happy to create the outline for the hierarchical structure of an app. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I would hand that over to one of our developers. We have 2 developers who work on app development specifically. But app development is a great way that you can really integrate a very seamless, I think, integration for an app is something that works on the back end for employees. Now, on the front end for customers, those apps, I will tell you right now, like when you think about expensive app development, those apps are more expensive to develop. When you have to develop the user interface for the front end customer use, where they can actually purchase everything from your business, like through the app, or if the app is going to serve as a marketing tool, like, to those customers, those kinds of apps can be a little bit update available. Those apps can be a little bit, more costly, and a lot of times, depending on the nature of, the size of the app that you're looking to develop, but a lot of times you're looking at $10,000 or even $15,000 upfront development just to look at the structure of an app. And then, full development can be $100,000 upwards for, like a really, highly integrated, like front end user interface for a customer. So some of those features can be very expensive, but using apps for your own employees and developing it through the back end where you can use it for your own team, that can be actually surprisingly cost efficient and a really good tool that you can take advantage of. Questions?
So this was real cool and real helpful. Would you mind sharing, I know you're just getting started, but for a couple companies I work for, I teach here now,
Mm-hmm.
but we had some, non-turnkey, I would call this, like individual, like ERP, whole system planning, individualized, and it took years and years. Have you ever had any nightmare scenarios where you tried to develop something and the budget just got crazy and it was very difficult to actually implement, or not really, because you planned it prior?
We have. One thing I would say that is a strength. So we've been officially sort of doing this as a company. We've been doing it just as individuals for a lot longer, but we've been doing this officially as a company for 3 years. And in that time, I can think of one project that kind of went off the rails, and sometimes that happens where. And I think the lesson that I learned from that, one thing that I do tend to be good at in the world of business is I'm good at saying no. And I think a lot of times it's important to say no when someone says, hey, can I develop a program or can I develop an app that can do this? A lot of times it's very easy to want to say yes, because, oh, that would be awesome. Yeah, let's do that. But a lot of times you do have to take some time and really do some research and look at the technological capabilities of your own business and the actual available technology and associated costs with that to determine whether or not that's a realistic project in a certain time frame or within a certain budget. Right. So a lot of it comes down to making sure we set expectations accurately. But yeah, there's one project in particular that comes to mind that the budget just ballooned because we didn't set strict parameters, and that I'll certainly take the full responsibility for that because the business owner wanted to adapt the project along the way, which is where the costs started to balloon. But with technology, that's something that I think a lot of people overlook is the importance of planning. Because if you said, okay, I want to have an app that's going to send emails to my top 10 customers once a month that says, hey, you're such a great customer, we wanted to attach, this 50% off coupon for, your next purchase. All right, so how do we track those top 10 customers? How do we, offer 50% off? Is there a limit to what that 50% off, is going to look like? 50% off a $100 purchase is you're giving away a lot less than 50% off a $1 million purchase, right? So you have to maybe, look at a little bit more in depth of what the business owner really wants from the technology that you're helping them develop. And if you're not careful about that, then that's a great point, because you're absolutely right. You can run into a situation where, like the budget balloons, quite a bit. From a time perspective, though, that's one thing that that I think a lot of coding has become very user-friendly. You're not typing out every single word and period and semicolon and parentheses that you used to have to even 5-10 years ago. So, if you're using something like Google Apps Script, I'm pressing Control Space every other, word, and it gives you a drop-down menu of the available functionality within the type of function that you're writing at the time. And so you're selecting from that menu. So it's a lot more, I know that, get spreadsheet is going to come down as, the fourth menu option when I'm at this point in the code. So I'm pressing Control Space, down, enter, and moving on. And, those 3 clicks are a lot faster than typing out get spreadsheet parentheses and putting, manually typing out, for example, a spreadsheet key. So there are little things in coding now that, from a time standpoint, make it a lot faster to write. And so you don't oftentimes run into, those situations where you have a project where somebody wants this done. It's going to take 5 years to be able to put something like that in place. Because the downside to that, what do you guys think happens every time a business owner says, this is what I want 5 years from now? What do you think happens over the next 5 years? Yeah, changes drastically. Most of us can, probably think of something that we really wanted for lunch and changed our mind, about that 5 minutes later. So when you're looking at a 5-year span of time, it is hard to be able to clearly define where you're going. If you're able to, provide somebody a product that they can take advantage of in a couple of weeks, then you're more likely to be on point with what that business owner's needs are, in that shorter span of time.
What about your cost structures? I mean, do they differ, or depending on the need, and what is the cost structure?
Sure. So we have hourly rates for programming, and that can be depending on what's needed, but that's going to be somewhere between $125 and $200 an hour for if you're just doing an individual programming need at an hourly rate. So that's a lot of times correcting existing programs. A lot of times, a business will say, hey, we have this program, but it stopped working. Something's going on. Can you get in there and take a look at the actual code of it and see if you can iron out a couple bugs? So that's usually what someone would do for an hourly, rate. Usually, when we look at a project, we do project-based rates, and we set targets for what that project is going to entail, and we give a total cost for that project, and that's not done hourly. So if it takes us, if we look at it and we say, okay, I think that should take about 3 hours, if it ends up taking us 5 because it was more complicated than we thought it would be, or because, we made a mistake in our own code and then it took us a while to debug our own code and we, have to take a little extra time, that's not a cost coming out of pocket from the customer. That's a project-based rate. So usually what we do for a coding-based project is we go in and we sit down with a customer and we say, okay, what is it that you want? We come up with an outline, and then we put together a formal proposal where we say, all right, to complete this project accomplishing goals A, B, and C that we have listed here, this would be the total cost. And sometimes, we can itemize that. So a customer might say, I'd like to automate my time tracking and payroll. And we can say, okay, to be able to have employees enter time and have that automatically populate, QuickBooks or whatever kind of, financial tool that you use, that would be this many total hours and this cost. To then automatically pay your employees and process payroll, that would be this many more total hours and this total cost, and so forth. So we can also itemize a project. But when we have a project-based fee, all of that is one fee for the project, depending on the scale of the project. When it's hourly, The programming is between 125 and 200 an hour. And then on the business consulting side of things, we have consulting services that we offer for as low as $50 a month. And then all the way up to what we call like a full partnership is $500 a month, and that includes access to a few programs that we offer. So a couple of our business owners can log on and do group coaching sessions with other business owners, and then they also get for the full business partnership, they get for that $500 a month. They also get 5 hours of one-on-one business coaching for their business as well. So that's that package, which we call our business partnership package. And usually what we're doing with those business owners is we're setting up technology platforms for them and then teaching them how to manage those so that they can utilize that for their business. But we also cover, under sort of the business coaching umbrella and business consulting umbrella, we cover everything from helping people come up with a marketing plan, talking about like their price points, doing research into their competitors, and learning how to actually like grow and run their business effectively. Other questions?
If there's no other questions, I'll say the last question. What can this community do for you, Chris? Which I've called you Chris. Is it Christopher or Chris?
It's Christopher on paper if my mom's mad at me, but Chris is perfectly okay. So I'm relatively new still to Fayetteville, so I do like having, we still have customers in Miami and New York are the two places where we have all of our existing customers, but I'm very new here, been here a few months, so I do like the idea of working with businesses where you can actually have that person-to-person interaction rather than doing everything remotely. I feel like I've been living in a computer a little bit too much these last few months because I'm doing everything remotely. I go down to Miami maybe once a month, for like 3 or 4 days at a time and actually see real people. But I would love to meet real people who have businesses. A great way to identify a business that could utilize our services, one is if anybody sees a business and somebody has an email address that's at Gmail instead of at, like whatever it is, .com, like for their actual business name, but if it's at gmail.com, then that's a good indicator that it's going to be someone with a small enough business that could probably use a little help structuring their business and figuring out the right way to utilize their technology. If anybody is looking at a website and they say, oh, this website doesn't really work, or there's not like much going on here on this website, that's another great indicator that might be a business that we could help out. And if anybody has a creative idea, so if you're at a dinner party or something and someone says, oh man, like, if I knew how to do app development and program and computery stuff, here's what I would do. And somebody has that novel idea that they get really excited about, but they're just like, yeah, I don't really know all that stuff. That's also a great contact for us because a lot of times we can work with someone on those ideas. And we are open to this. We have done it twice where we have developed software for someone and done a business partnership with that person where we'll take a percentage equity and set up an LLC with that person and do a partnership, and we'll take a percentage so there's no out-of-pocket expense. So a lot of times somebody has a great idea. If it is a good idea, we'll actually structure it that way so it doesn't always have to be an out-of-pocket cost for someone who says, hey, I really kind of want to develop this idea. We did this actually for a student of mine. This was a high school kid. He had this great idea, which we helped with the tech development on, and the idea was, so he educated us on this, but apparently apparel releases all happen Thursday mornings, like for like big shoe releases, if you're super into shoes, right, and like super into apparel, big apparel releases tend to happen on Thursday mornings. Well, high school kids are in class on Thursday morning. And for these like limited, items that come out where they have, they're gonna, release only 100 pairs of these shoes and they cost, $800 and whatever, like crazy prices that there are. A lot of these high school kids like really want that pair of shoes, but they're in class and they sell out in 2 seconds online. So how do you, ever even have a chance of getting those super cool shoes? So his idea was, you know, my friends and I, a lot of us are real into shoes, and we can never get like the new releases, so we end up getting them online, you know, aftermarket at crazy markups. And, you know, like, I mean, he and some of his friends were telling us stories about, you know, that they've paid like $2,000 for a pair of shoes, and just insanity to me. I would not pay $2,000 for a pair of shoes probably ever. But so his idea was, what if there was a way to automatically place an order online so that we could place the order ahead of time, put in our, you know, credit card information or whatever else, and then have, in theory, like someone else place the order for us. So originally we were like, okay, well, let's look at, you know, potentially like doing it as just, you know, a manual like hiring process where we can hire a couple people who are available at 11 a.m. the second that shoe gets released, and they can have all your information, enter it in the system, and, you know, the second it turns 11 and, you know, says it's available, you hit submit and see if you can get the order in. And then we said, well, let's look at creating a bot for it. So we developed a bot that you could place through secured transaction. You place all your credit card information, you select the apparel release that you're looking, you know, to purchase, and then the next day, when it actually comes live, the bot tries to place the order for you. If it's successful, then the purchase you're paying, so if it's a $100 pair of shoes, you're paying 20%. So you're paying $120 for the bot to place the order for you. So if it's not successful, then nothing happens. Your card doesn't get charged anything, and that information, you know, gets in a safe way. It gets removed from the system so that you don't have the existing data of, you know, someone's credit card on file. So that was his idea. We helped with the tech development for it, and we kept our small percentage. But I will tell you that this kid, as a high school student, when he was a junior and senior in high school, this kid was making several $100,000 a year off of this idea because he got way into like apparel. He had a huge Twitter following. He would, you know, recommend for other people like which things, you know, were coming out when and what to buy and what's cool. People would go and, you know, through his Twitter, go to the site and enter their information to purchase these apparel orders ahead of time. And, you know, he really, you know, is doing very well for himself from, you know, just a really creative, novel idea. So a lot of times that's kind of the fun side, you know, of the business. Those things don't work out as smoothly or successfully every day, so I don't want to stand up here and say, like, hey, anyone who's got a clever idea, we can make you $1 million tomorrow. But those are kind of the fun ones where, you know, when you have that idea where you're like, oh, I've always thought this would be cool to try to implement, those are great, you know, referrals for me, just because that's also where I get excited too, and I'm happy to chat with anyone about just the technological potential of, you know, incorporating a novel idea like that into, you know, the technology space.
All right, well, thank you so much.
My pleasure.